Whether it's AMC's Fear Fest, The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, or just combing through the Shudder catalog, October is all about genre films. And no matter what you do this month, you better be damn sure you get in some good old-fashioned horror. Hey friends, Tyler Nichols here, and I'm the host of JoBlo Horror Originals, as well as the WTF narrator and writer and editor on various other revisited series. Watching horror movies is pretty much a year-round thing for me, as I'm sure it is for most of you. But there's something special about choosing what to watch for the Halloween season. First is a film that I actually saw for the first time this past year. Trick or Treat. No, not the Michael Dougherty one. This is about a satanic rocker and his #1 fan who is forced to stop him from raising hell. It's filled with some awesome 80s metal music and some killer vibes. This is a must-watch. Now, I don't actually own this one since I've been waiting on a sweet 4K. Come on, Lionsgate, what the f is the deal? So, Editor Kier, make sure to put a copy in my hand. Cobweb. This movie is so damn underrated and deserves to be in everyone's rotation, as it's just oozing with Halloween atmosphere, and it's a great creature feature. Finally, I had to choose a movie with Michael Myers, but I went a little off the beaten path and am choosing Halloween 6: The Producer's Cut. That's right, Cult of Thorn and all. I'd say this is the most underrated film in the franchise. I know it's a crazy take, and makes sense of some of the crazy cult elements that's introduced in the 5th film. Plus, we get more Loomis, which is always a good thing. Now here's Niki Minter, Mike Holtz, Andrew Hatfield, John Fallon, and Lance Velchek as they tell you some of their Halloween picks.
Hey guys, happy Halloween. This year, I decided to try something different. So the first one I'm gonna watch on Halloween is The Gate. The Gate is a film about 2 kids in the 80s, one of them played by the young Steven Dorff, who open up a gate to hell in their backyard, if you will. And then little demons in all their stop motion glory erupt out and cause a ruckus, among a bunch of other things. I love that movie. The whole suburban setting, horror happening in an environment that we can all relate to, it just added more impact to it, much like Poltergeist. So, The Gate. The second movie I'm going to watch is The Shining, 1980, Stanley Kubrick, Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, little kid, don't remember his name, you know, Tony, that guy. What can I say about The Shining that hasn't been said a million times? I mean, you know, the arresting visuals, the intense performances, Kubrick's masterful shooting style, slow, ominous. There's so much to dig in to that movie. And like many of you out there, one thing that I love about The Shining is outside of a couple little really hefty stabs, if you will, it doesn't tell the audience this is what's happening. It does, like I said, a couple healthy stabs here and there. You're like, oh, okay. But for the most part, it's really, to some degree, left to your interpretation. So I always found that fascinating about the film. And of course, the score. Dun, 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 you know. And last but not least, can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but Jason Goes to Hell. And the reason I want to watch Jason Goes to Hell on Halloween is because I've always hated that movie. It's the Friday the 13th movie I've seen the least. But I do remember that the kills were great. Remember that chick on top of the dude in the tent, spike in the back, ripped open. She rips open, then the guy's face, can't go wrong with that. Kills are great, practical effects. I think I'm gonna have a good time with it on this round as a B-movie, smutty B-movie, as opposed to a Friday the 13th sequel. With that said, I'm sure all of you felt the same thing when the final shot in the film came up. Freddy's glove coming out, taking Jason's hockey mask and teasing the impending Freddy versus Jason. That was my favorite scene in the movie outside that kill. So we'll see how it plays out this time. So what about you guys and dolls? Stab some comments below and let us know what you're gonna watch on Halloween.
Lance Velchek here for JoBlo Horror Originals. Credentials right here. All right, for Halloween and the Halloween season, I'm going to pick 3 movies. First one, it's not necessarily a Halloween movie, but I do think it does fit the season in terms of it's a fun little horror movie. Puppet Master 2. I think the first one's a classic, third one's a fan favorite, 4 and 5 were probably the low end of the good era. But 2 2 doesn't get enough credit. One, Toulon is this evil, invisible man out of the Universal Monster movies. The puppets are meaner. They're more sadistic. The gore and the violence is upped. Not to mention the entire ending, which is the movie I wish we could have seen after, is them going to the mental institution to, entertain the kids. Next is Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs. I wasn't sure if this was going to hold up. I used to watch a lot as a kid, and then over the last decade or so, I've kind of just haven't thought about it. So the other day, I put it on, and they don't make them like this anymore. I mean, written and directed by Wes Craven. It's a dark movie, though there is this sort of whimsical tone. A fool little kid that has to sort of survive the movie. Something about him reminds me of like the Goonies, or that sort of E.T. childhood like adventure. Then you have the dark parts with Everett McGill and Wendy Robbie, which is awesome that they play so well together as brother, sister, husband, wife. It's really good. But that whole angle gets really mean. But then there's this black humor throughout. The Gimp outfit is clearly a joke. Damn. Overall, it's just a strange movie. So yeah, if you haven't seen it in a while, I recommend it. It holds up extremely well. Okay, last but not least is House of a Thousand Corpses. I know Rob Zombie is divisive, and I know his shtick is kind of worn a bit thin, but I think people forget how important during the time, the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of American horror was very sanitized. Scream made things polished, and though it worked for that movie, I don't know. We needed something like House of a Thousand Corpses at the time. It was dirty, gritty, it's kind of gross, trashy. Something like it needed to happen. Now, yes, is it style for substance? 100%. I know it's basically taken from a bunch of other movies that are classics, but it's one big music video. Again, it's mean, it's strange. I love the look, I love the editing. Out of the 3 picks I have today, that feels the most like Halloween. And if you could get over, people's opinion of it, I think it's just a fun movie, and it's worth a watch.
Hey guys, it's me, Niki Minner, your TV horror hostess with the mostest. You can find me on TV Horror, Revisited, Test of Time, and my voice is in several other things. I'm going with childhood nostalgia today. The first pick is Little Monsters, one of my all-time favorites ever. I always wanted a best friend like Maurice. I felt like I would have fit in really good in the underground monster hangout, breaking shit, eating pizza, putting piss in somebody's apple juice. I mean, what a life, right? Next one, middle school pick, The Craft. Need I say more, but I will. We all wanted to be in a coven. We were all playing Light as Feathers, Stiff as a Board. Fruza Balk, absolutely legendary, seriously quotable. We are the weirdos, mister.
Girls, watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Last but not least, this played a lot in my house. My mom is a massive Stephen King fan, and this came out in '89, and I was very little, and I think this is how we were kind of all introduced to horror at this point. Our parents were just putting shit on in the background, and we were, around. But I think that there's many levels of fucked up in this movie, but I think that Zelda, seeing her for the first time, is probably the worst and most traumatizing. So, I mean, if you're affected, I could probably put a 1-800 number down here and we can swap stories. So, all right, guys, happy Halloween.
Hey guys, I am Mike at JoBlo, and that is a skeleton's butt. You'll have to forgive me, I'm traveling at the moment, so this is the best I could come up with, was that skeleton's butt. 3 movies I like to watch on Halloween. I am gonna go Halloween, but I am gonna go Halloween 4. Well, the opening of that movie has the most Halloween atmosphere in the simple opening shots of the farm town as well, and also when you go to them transporting Michael Myers on Halloween night, which is a great time to transfer Michael Myers on Halloween night, and then also the original Fright Night, just because it just has that Halloween feel to it. It's got just everything I want in a Halloween movie in the original Fright Night. The remake with Colin Farrell's not bad either. And finally, I'm gonna go with something actually a little bit scary. Truck driving right by Grave Encounters, the found footage movie Grave Encounters. A lot of people still haven't seen this one, and actually, to me, has some moments that genuinely freak you out. So if you're looking for something actually a little bit scary, and found footage this Halloween, check out Grave Encounters. And I also forgot to mention what I do here, which is not just sit in public parks and creep out the locals. I write some WTF horror videos for JoBlo, as well as some other random videos on the horror side on JoBlo, and generally just help out wherever I can. And that's it. Hope you guys have a happy Halloween. That's Skeleton's Butt.
Hey guys, it's Andrew, and for my Halloween recommendations, I wanted to give a little mix of old and new. So my favorite movie this year, which I don't have the physical copy yet, and I'm working on it, is Bring Her Back. It's well acted, it's well shot, it doesn't pull any punches, it's got great gore, kids in peril for you parents like me where that stuff affects you. And it's just a good callback to old Ozploitation of the late 70s and 80s. So fantastic, highly recommend. The other two, one of them is Fade to Black, which is a 1980 film that has a little bit of everything in terms of being a slasher. It's a callback to the old Universal monster movies, and it's not done by a big writer and director. It's got a fun cast, but highly recommend it. Fade to Black from 1980. And then another 80s movie that I just don't think it's talked about enough is Fred Decker's Night of the Creeps. Might have a video on it coming up soon, but if you want to make a double-decker, you could do Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps. But this year, to get really that Halloween horror experience, I'm going to go with Night of the Creeps. So Night of the Creeps, Fade to Black, and Bring Her Back are my 3 picks for Halloween this year. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to let us know some of your annual Halloween watches in the comments below. And have a happy Halloween.
Well, 20 years seem to have flown by. Seeing this in theaters for its anniversary was a wild experience that just punctuates how the passage of time really can get ahead of you. But hey, enough about getting old. Instead, I'm here to celebrate a milestone, to give thanks and a bit of love towards a movie that was quite important in the early 2000s. Today, I'd like to discuss and dissect the movie's defining scene. Now, to be clear, this isn't to be confused with its most iconic scene. No, see, I want to find, in my opinion, one that encapsulates everything a movie brings, and sometimes, like a single off of an album, right? It isn't one the same. The most mainstream part isn't always the best. So let's head back to the grimy grindhouse aesthetic of 70s Texas and talk shop about the one scene from House of a Thousand Corpses that makes it the cult classic we've all come to know and love. So this completed filming in 2000 but didn't hit theaters until 2003. House of a Thousand Corpses was Universal giving White Zombie lead singer turned solo artist a chance at writing and directing his own big-budget horror movie. But, as it happens from time to time in the industry, after a first cut, Universal got cold feet, and fearing what they had couldn't be salvaged into an R-rated cut, they were wrong. The movie was shelved. Eventually, Rob was able to purchase the rights back, and after a deal with MGM fell through.
Then we're at MGM for a minute, and then I made some comment jokingly about MGM having no morals, so they don't have a problem releasing the film. But they didn't find that to be very funny, so then they kicked me out of there.
Lionsgate came in for the save, and thus, House of a Thousand Corpses finally escaped, though edited for an R rating, as would have always been the endgame. Now, this should come as no surprise, but spoilers lie ahead. I mean, let's be honest, there's no reason to make a video about a 20-year-old movie and be coy about it. Rob Zombie's first foray into writing/directing was a hodgepodge of influences. Hillbilly aesthetic filtered through a rock star's morbid mindset, and in doing so gave us one of the more singular visions for what he wanted his type of horror to represent. This movie is distinct and is one of a kind, at least in terms of stylistic approach. Love him or hate him, Rob Zombie's movies have their own flavor. And thinking about what moments define everything here, what scene is House of a Thousand Corpses? Now, I could make a case for Grandpa's amazing stand-up set.
You be quiet! You're gonna wake up Grandma!
And gives a little bit of credence to like how funny and sort of witty this is as a black comedy horror flick. I could easily argue the long crane hole before Walton Goggins' epic death, or even the final reveal of Dr. Satan. And a quick aside, he should have absolutely been kept in The Devil's Rejects. I don't agree with why Rob Zombie cut him. This deleted scene where he bleeds out Rosario Dawson would have added that sort of missing link and kept the slight out-of-this-world feeling from House. And I know that's not what he wanted, but I do think the change in sort of style and genre was what made The Devil's Rejects so interesting as a sequel, but you should have kept Dr. Satan as a link. My opinion, but what are you gonna do? But no. The opening, as simple and to the point as it is, it's what sums up everything that makes House of a Thousand Corpses its own. Starting off with the Svengoolie-esque Dr. Wolfenstein commercial for the local station's horror host, we already kind of dig into the tone. It's corny, retro, and sets up the time period while cutting into Captain Spaulding's roadside attraction commercial, and in doing so, his introduction. We have the green-hued fluorescence in the grungy location of his horror museum/gas station, pulling back for a wide, showing its creepy location through this kind of stylized and slightly exaggerated way. Captain Spaulding, played by the always great Sid Haig, immediately garners sympathy. I'm talking, this guy is a wisecracking, shit-talking clown who seems to be on the Al Bundy spectrum of joy.
What say I nail the souls directly to your feet? How come you asking so many jackassy questions?
There's a reason why this character is beloved, and it all came into itself right here. The back and forth with Stucky. Bonnie and Clyde's Michael J. Pollard is fun, weird, and absolutely trashy.
If you knew him, you might understand his urges.
Worse than a rabid-ass baboon.
Now, besides some off-kilter characters, this is really what sort of refines Rob Zombie's style and look behind the camera. Of course, it started in music videos directed by him, but I feel House is that sort of perfected. Percussion takes over as we get a POV closing in on the front door. And we dolly into an angry and annoyed Spaulding. It's a robbery. And I still love, and I always will, that he puts his hands up as requested, but with 2 middle fingers. Now, as far as we know, he's an innocent, grumpy, small businessman who doesn't have time for this bullshit. But he doesn't back down. Hell, even taunts the 2 robbers.
You miserable motherfucker. I ought to jump over this counter and bash your f***ing balls in.
When the main one, Carl, mentions his hatred for clowns, there is a change. Something that makes more sense in the moments to come, but we see a darkness right here in Spaulding's eyes. He's giving up his hand and we don't even know it. See, Carl gives him to the count of 10. The music intensifies, yet he continues to berate the robber, basically daring him to pull the trigger. It's black comedy dialogue mixed with the serious and intense tone. See, this is something that Zombie nails here. And you aren't really sure what's going on. Is this clown really willing to die over pride and ego? Then we get the triple cut. Some giant man with an oversized mask and mallet bursts through the door. And this is a very odd but very zombie-specific cut here. Followed by triples of Carl.
Triples of Roadrunner, triples of a Nova.
And with a quick swing and gunshot, we realize that Captain Spaulding was never in any danger. No, this is his wheelhouse. His huff of that sweet smell of the barrel says it all. To quote the great Burt Gummer, these 2 bozos
Broke into the wrong goddamn rec room, didn't you, you bastard?
Now, with the haunting laugh, the blaring score, we now know that these 2 criminals walked into the lion's den and they never had a clue. But it's this last moment, right here, that sells this entire scene and sets up what makes House of a Thousand Corpses so fun, adventurous, and why 20 years later we're still talking about it today. The 3 shots to the face, followed by this line.
Goddamn motherfucker got blood all over my best clown suit.
And then cutting straight into a banger of a song. Yes, 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 yes. I'm sorry, this is awesome. There is no conversation here. This is how you open up a movie. Establish style, tone, and create one hell of an iconic horror character.
1, yo mama. 3, yo grandma.
So smoke them if you got them, pour yourself a drink, and let's celebrate 20 years of House of a Thousand Corpses.
It's been a thrill, so sayonara.
What's creepier? Creepy kids or creepy pets? How about both? Pet Sematary gave us the blueprint for Creepy Cute Kid and Cat, as well as a whole lot of other things. This is a special adaptation of Stephen King's work that has a lot of fans and, of course, some detractors. As it stands, this first adaptation is heads and shoulders above its remake, or rather the second adaptation of the same story for many reasons. Here's one horror girl's view on this late 1980s horror classic. One of many Stephen King adaptations to grace the screens in the 1980s, this one is a favorite for many and for good reasons. Here we have an adaptation that took some liberties and adjusted a few things, but not changing all that much in the end. A big reason for this is that Stephen King himself did the adaptation and wrote the film's screenplay, giving it more than just his stamp of approval, but giving it life himself. His work as a screenwriter here is fantastic and makes for a great theatrical viewing if given the chance, or home video watch if not. For those not in the know, once arrived at their new home, they discover that they live on a very busy road without any fencing or safety to protect them. They also meet a sweet elderly neighbor who seems full of good intentions, at least at first.
I live just across the road.
Soon they find themselves on a walk behind the property where they find a pet cemetery. Friendly neighbor man later explains what it does to the dad as they share beers and lets him know that
sometimes that is better.
Setting the tone for the rest of the film. The family cat gets killed by a truck on that unsafe road, and Dad finds out that he doesn't have the heart to tell his little girl about it and decides to test that pet cemetery's powers. Of course, once his family is back home, he soon finds out that Dad is indeed better. To a sweet, then immediately traumatizing sequence where the family's toddler, Gage, is run over by a massive truck. Dad knows better, but can't leave well enough alone as he mourns his baby and is inconsolable. This leads to the best bits in the film, those scenes with toddler Gage looking both absolutely adorable and creepy as they make them. He speaks but few words, but makes them count, and he wants to kill, kill, kill. Can someone so cute really be this evil? Well, when this cutie was buried in the pet cemetery, he clearly came back with something more. A need for blood. A need to kill. He's adorably deadly, even at his tiny size. This of course leads to Dad having to handle things.
No fair.
Then Mom coming back, dying.
Because she just died. She just died a little while ago.
Cycles the Who problem all over again. This man, Louis Creed, just does not learn his lesson. With King writing, director Mary Lambert creates a strong film with some truly, absolutely creepy moments that make the skin crawl to this day. Her work here is solid, and she has the right touch for the material at hand and the atmosphere needed to pull this one off. This film has some truly creepy sequences that crawl under the skin. The backstory of Miss Creed and her sister Zelda is something else, which, while not entirely needed, adds a truly creepy angle and something else for the mother to have in her past to make her weary of losing people. Mr. Creed also gets his moment early on in the film where he deals with death, that of a student hit by a vehicle on campus, that brings him to his very own ghost to warn him to guide him in that way. Even Mr. Crandall, the helpful neighbor, has his own side story of sadness and creepiness. These three side stories could have easily been omitted here, and the film would have just functioned fine. But they add truly something great and flesh out the characters as well as the film. Of course, the kids and the cat don't really get much backstory, but that's expected here. Now a quick comparison with the remake from 2019. In the remake, the kid who dies is the older one, the daughter, something that helps the filmmaker to get a character who can more believably stalk and kill folks, one who is more able and able of more. This was honestly a mistake. Gage in the 1989 version is much creepier than Ellie in the 2019 version, needing less screen time and being more effectively creepy. The fact that he can't fully speak, that he's limited by his tiny size, that he's just so darn adorable, make his death that much sadder and his murder gaze when he comes back from the death that much harder hitting. He's innocent, yet fully corrupted, which is entirely the point here.
The place we're going is on the other side of that.
For some fans, this fan included, his turn from so freaking sweet to murder baby is the main part of the film, even though it's not the longest part. Church the Cat gets more time for mayhem, but something about it feels like a precursor to something else. And well, the something else is Killer Gage. Of course, we do get Killer Mommy later on, but she's the final straw. The "you didn't learn your lesson, now pay." She's important, and so is her death and subsequent turning, but she's not the main one here. This is one of the main reasons why I keep going back to this one over and over again, part of why this film is a solid 8 out of 10 over 30 years later. The above mentioned writing by Stephen King is solid here. The directing by Mary Lambert is on point. The acting is fantastic as well. Here, the lead is Dale Midkiff as Louis Creed, giving an emotional performance that gets more and more involved as the film advances. He does great work with the part and really brings it home in the last third. Playing Rachel Creed is Denise Crosby, who does quite well too. Her work here gives balance to Midkiff and really gives the late 80s mom vibe to the character. She also gets more of a juicy part at the end, and it's a great watch. Playing the kids are Blaise Bardal as Ellie and Miko Hughes as Gage. Bardal gets a few good bits of acting in here, and does the most out of them, but with her character dispatched to her maternal grandparents fairly quickly, she mostly gets to cry on the phone and not really be there for the fun horror chaos. Hughes gets the interesting part here, getting an insane kill scene and then getting to come back as a zombie baby. Of course, he was but a wee one when this was filmed, but he does good work considering everything. Yes, his performance hinges mostly on him being adorable and then doing unspeakable things while being adorable. So, it's as good of a performance as a little kid can give here. Playing the neighbor, Judd Crandall, is Fred Gwynn, who steals scenes even while being the exposition character of the film. Without him and his work, the character of Judd could have just been so bland and just plain annoying. But Gwynn really takes the part and makes it something worth watching. His face-off with Zombie Gage is fun from a horror point of view. As an aside for those who might be interested, Miko Hughes appeared in the music video for Funeral Derangements by Ice Nine Kill in a fun homage to Pet Sematary, where he plays a reckless truck driver. That music video is filled with cameos and a bunch of fun for horror fans. Back to the film we're loving on here. Pet Sematary also boasts great practical special effects, a sign of a great 1980s horror, and something more current releases could use remembering. The work here by David Leroy Anderson, Lance Anderson, and John Blake shows what is really there in the scene often works better in getting a reaction out of the cast and the viewer. The ooey gooey stuff here looks fantastic. Another aside, David Leroy Anderson is married to Heather Langenkamp, who plays herself and the mother to Miko Hughes in the amazing New Nightmare, and where her husband is an effects artist. Yeah, the horror trivia runs deep here. Now, there are plenty of reasons to love this film, and one major, still to this day, is the theme song when the credits roll by the Ramones. The Ramones! Yes, it's exciting to a happy nerd girl to have a track by the Ramones close a favorite horror film. They are perfect for this. Their music is perfect for this. As it is on the credits only, it's really easy to enjoy it, but it's also easy to wish they had more music on the soundtrack. However, the score by Elliot Goldenthal is fantastic here, giving just the right support throughout the film and helping with the creepy factor by supporting it just right. Scoring a film like this can make or break a scene, and here it makes all the scenes better, by being subtle when need be, and more in your face when needed. The cinematography here goes with the story and the music, really giving the viewers images that both work and look good. The work by Peter Stein really showcases the horror and the hauntingly creepy sequences. The bits with Zelda, the ghosts of the dead student scenes, Gage as a zombie baby is filmed. It's all framed carefully, giving the film just the right ick factor. The scene where Gage dies, the truck coming at him, the little shoe flying onto the ground, the way it's all filmed, the way we don't actually see the impact, but feel it as an audience really gives the film its tone. And the work to create this is not simply good writing and good directing, but the cinematography, with the hand from the editing, is central here, giving the sequence life, or rather death in a way that is just shocking and sad and horrific and so much more. The scene has layers and layers in its visual aspect as well as the sound. It's a hard-hitting scene, and it's such a strong start to the horror beyond church here. One small complaint here is that a truck that size hitting a toddler, there should be no toddler to bring back.
Get that baby!
This kid would be a pile of mush. However, we all know that would not work for the story here, so we'll assume the truck was able to slow down enough before hitting the cherub, and hit him just enough to kill him, but not enough to turn him to paste. With all this said, Pet Sematary earns its 8 out of 10 easily, and even this many years later, it maintains its effect, especially on new viewers, but also of fans who have been vocal online about loving it. The remake did decent enough at the box office, but fans of the original seem more annoyed at it than anything. The 1989 film has a sequel as well, starring Edward Furlong, still Eddie at the time, which came out in 1992. The sequel is fun, but nowhere as effective as the first film. The 1989 adaptation is strong, and definitely gains from having its script written by the man himself, Stephen King, giving any change made more standing in the hearts and heads of his fans. As a fan of mainly Stephen King adaptations over his bookwork, yeah, I said it. This one is fun, it's horrific, it's one that makes little hairs on the back of the neck stand up. It's a film that is memorable and one that is almost perfect. The fact that it's still creepy this many years and this many rewatches later speaks volumes on the film's effectiveness and entertainment value.
It's a story that we've all heard before. Parents leave their kids home alone for a few days, and the unsupervised kids throw a party and wreck the joint.
My house is full of shit! He's shit everywhere!
And that's how it goes when 12-year-old Glenn is left in the care of his 15-year-old sister, Alexandra. But these kids also get into a whole new level of trouble when their parents are gone. They open a tunnel to hell in their own backyard, conjuring demons that play mind games with them and then become a physical threat. This is what happens in the 1987 film The Gate. And if you haven't seen this one, it is the best horror movie you never saw. The Gate started with a screenplay written by Michael Nankin, who had co-written and co-directed the 1980 comedy Midnight Madness. Upset that a project that he'd been working on fell apart, he decided to purge his negative emotions by writing a horror movie script. Crafting a story that centered on a young boy named Glenn, he built the story around his own childhood experiences. Glenn was a version of himself, and Glenn's best friend Terry was based on his own best friend. They used to dig holes in the yard together, imagining that they could dig from their home in California all the way through the earth and come out on the other side in China. But in this script, the hole that Glenn and Terry are digging ends up being a gateway to hell. The first draft was dark and nasty and packed with death. Demonic creatures emerge from the hole and get out into the neighborhood. They then proceed to invade homes and attack people in their beds. This all built up Glenn to having to face off with a 12-foot tall demon lord, who would be entirely made of bloody entrails. Nankin was able to sell his script to New Century Entertainment and the Vista organization, but they didn't like the idea of a movie starring children if it wasn't going to be for children, so they had Nankin rewrite the script to be more family friendly. He removed the violent death scenes and the description of the demon lord being made of guts, but he did keep all of the creepiness in there. Nankin had been planning to direct the film himself, but when the Canadian production company Alliance Entertainment got involved, they vetoed that idea. The movie then would be shot in Canada with a Canadian director at the helm. Born in Hungary but raised in Canada, director Tibor Takacs had been pitched a project that never got made to producer John Kemeny. Kemeny wasn't interested in the pitch, but he offered Takacs the chance to work on a different project that was already in development. One option was the supernatural revenge film The Wraith, which ended up being an awesome movie that was directed by its writer Mike Marvin. Another option was The Gate, and Takacs decided to take the job of directing that one. Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some. He wanted to make sure that Nankin would be involved throughout the process. He brought new ideas to the table that he had Nankin work on with another rewrite. First, he had the kids aged up a little bit. Glenn and Terry were 8 or 9 in the original script, and they ended up being 12. Glenn had an older brother in the script, but Takacs had grown up with a sister, so the brother became 15, almost 16-year-old sister, Alexandra, who in this movie is just called Al. Takacs had also wanted to make a child's fear of abandonment a theme throughout the movie, and he drew inspiration from the satanic panic of the 1980s when it came to the demons. Nankin had the kids getting demon information from books in the library. It was Takacs' idea to make Terry a fan of demon-themed rock music, which does make sense given that his first movie was a dystopian rock opera called Metal Messiah. The kids learn about the demons through the lyrics and liner notes, and by playing a rock album backwards. The whole digging to China idea was also scrapped. The hole in Glenn's backyard comes from an old tree being removed. Simple as that. And when Glenn and Terry notice a geode in the hole, they dig more in hopes of finding more geodes. But a series of circumstances turn the hole left by the tree into a gateway of hell. blood from a cut finger, a geode that splits open, causing demonic writing to appear on a magic slate board, a levitation trick gone wrong at a party thrown by Al, the family dog dying, and being dumped into the tree hole by Al's uncaring friend, which is considered in this case a sacrifice, and it conjures up some serious demons. And while most of the demons are actually tiny creatures, don't worry, a giant demon lord will show up in this movie. Hundreds of young actors auditioned for the roles of Glenn, Terry, and Al. Screen tests were shot with a couple of dozen of these auditioners. Joshua John Miller, who had memorable roles in River's Edge and Near Dark around this time, was in the running, but he didn't get cast. Instead, Stephen Dorff was chosen to play Glenn, with Louis Tripp as Terry and Krista Denton as Al. Kelly Rowan and Jennifer Irwin were cast as Al's friends, the Lee sisters, with Sean Fagan as Eric, the friend who disposes of the dog corpse. Scott Denton and Deborah Grover have scenes as Glenn and Al's parents, but they're absent for most of the action. The plan for The Gate was to start filming in the fall of 1985, but the funding wasn't in place, so the start date was pushed back to the spring of 1986. Cox had called this a fortuitous delay because it gave him several extra months to polish the script with Nankin and work with special effects supervisor Randall William Cook, designing creatures and storyboarding the effects and sequences. Cox told Coming Soon, quote, "We ended up with several similar creature looks for the minions to choose from. Technological and budgetary constraints kept us in the ballpark of what we ended up with. We knew their heights relative to a human and that they would be played by people in suits on forced perspective sets. They needed to be of a design that could easily be manufactured in multiples as a rubber suit with a lot of agility. Due to budget constraints, we could only create one head mold, so we had to choose only one expression. They ended up with a dumbfounded look on their faces. Only one had some very basic facial animatronics. Throughout the film, Randy used an encyclopedia of techniques to make the minions work. Blue screen, trick perspective, stop motion, and puppets were all used in rotation. Once you think you figured it out, we introduce another technique. Another process used to great effect was to shoot them at a lower frame rate so they would appear to move a little more furtively. They also had to be coached to move in special ways in order to compensate for the frame rate. The minions were played by young adults who volunteered to get into these costumes, and they look awesome in the finished film, and so does the giant stop-motion Demon Lord. According to the filmmakers, The Gate was made on a budget of 2.5 million Canadian. When it was released in May of 1987, it opened in second place at the weekend box office and went on to earn $13.5 million, and that's US during its theatrical run. Then came a successful VHS release, and the movie also got a lot of play on cable, allowing it to gather a large cult following and reach a lot of fans who consider it to be one of the many classics of the 80s. In 2009, Lionsgate gave it a special edition DVD release, and a Vestron Video Blu-ray followed in 2017. The film was such a success, Cox and Nankin reunited for a sequel just a couple of years later. Louis Tripp reprised the role of Terry in The Gate 2: Trespassers, but that one wasn't nearly as well received as the first one. In 2009, it was announced that Alex Winter, yes, the guy who's best known for playing Bill S. Preston Esquire, would be directing a remake of The Gate in 3D, but that never made its way into production. The Gate lives up to its title in more ways than one. Sure, it's about kids accidentally opening a gate to hell, but the title also fits because this is a great gateway horror movie. If a young kid is looking to get into the horror genre, this should be one of their earliest viewings. But just because it has children in the lead roles and is family friendly overall, doesn't mean that it does not have some edge. A kid can test their movie watching courage with this one because it's incredibly creepy. It's relentless in its attempt to scare the hell out of its characters and keep the viewer on the edge of our seats throughout. There is a thick atmosphere of dread hanging over every scene. Something is off from the start. We know things are going to go terribly wrong, and events get gradually stranger and more dangerous as the story goes on. Cox wanted to bring a feeling of being under a magic spell to the movie, and he succeeded. The director saw the film as kind of a dark fairy tale, as he told The Daily Dead, quote, Fairy tales are an important part of your development, your creativity, especially when you're young. I feel like you have to experience fear when you're young because it opens up a floodgate to imagination. My own experience is filled with those seminal things that happened when I was a kid. Like when I saw Snow White. I was a scared little kid after, but that really fueled my imagination. The scenes with the demons, small and large, will stick with anyone who watches this movie, but these creatures aren't the only threats. The evil forces that have been unleashed can influence the world around the characters and tap into their deepest fears or manipulate their emotions. This brings us some of the best, creepiest scenes in the movie, like when Terry is made to think that his mother, who passed away the year before, has returned. They embrace, only for Terry to realize he's holding the corpse of the dog. A scared Glenn runs outside and is happy to see that his parents have come home, but it's a trick. The father lets out a demonic cry of, "You've been bad," and attacks Glenn while the mom just stands there laughing. Terry tells Glenn at one point that a worker had died during the construction of his house, and instead of telling the police, his co-workers just sealed him up in the walls of the house. The evil plays on Glenn's fear of that idea. A zombie worker emerges from the walls, and one of the most amazing effects in the movie involves this guy. The zombie falls forward, and when he hits the ground, his body turns into a bunch of little demon minions. Those mind-blowing effects, the intense creepiness, the strength of the performances delivered by child actors, they all work together to make The Gate an enduring gateway horror classic, even all of these decades later. So, if you haven't seen it yet, seek it out. Whether you're just getting into horror or you've been a fan for years, The Gate is absolutely a must-see.
Film obsession and fandom is nothing new. You have the toxic, gatekeeping kind, and you have the mostly harmless ones. We all have that one friend that can rattle off names of directors, actors, movies, and character names quicker than knowing their license plate or driver's license number. Heck, I'd wager most of the people that work on this channel, this writer absolutely included, as well as most of our lovely subscribers and viewers, have at least a little bit of one of these in them. What happens though if you combine that obsession with a hard life that includes bullying and feeling like a nobody? What happens if that person snaps and uses their knowledge for evil? Today, on the best horror movie you never saw, we will see just that with 1980's Fade to Black. Fade to Black was written and directed by Vernon Zimmerman, who, while only having 8 directing credits and 9 writing credits to his name, contributed to cinema in a lot of different ways. This movie feels very personal and even biographical, if Zimmerman had a truly bad day. The plot follows a young man named Eric Binford, who is a loner in every sense of the word. His aunt, who he lives with, despises his movie-loving lifestyle and thinks he is wasting away, even commenting that if he keeps going on this path, that he will never make it to 30. His boss and co-workers at the movie distribution warehouse he works at see him as either a screw-up or a weirdo, and anyone who runs into him sees him as a creep the second he starts discussing his beloved movies. To be fair, Eric's appearance is that of a gaunt chain smoker who looks unhealthy, and he clearly has deeper, undiagnosed issues going on. While he is certainly unlikable, he is also tragic in a way that few films are able to capture. Dennis Christopher plays that hollow sadness with a disgusting charm that few could handle. Christopher is almost certainly known to his audience for his role as adult Eddie Kasprat, but he has been acting since 1967, and he has shown up in a few other high-profile movies, like 2012's Django Unchained. While he has stayed largely in the television sphere, with roles in Sequest, Star Trek, and Deadwood, this movie was sandwiched in between roles for Best Picture nominated films Breaking Away and Chariots of Fire. He plays Eric perfectly and leans into the dual personality of being completely happy and borderline normal while also snapping when things just don't go his way. Scenes like when Australian aspiring actress and model Marilyn O'Connor takes a chance on him and hitches a ride to work while even agreeing to see a movie that night. Another one is when Eric himself hitches a ride with famed Hollywood producer Gary Bialy, and pitches him a movie he really likes, go a long way to giving Eric and us viewers hope that maybe, just maybe, Eric can turn it around. These scenes and hopes are dashed when young Marilyn forgets to show up to the movie, which sets off Eric to kill his aunt. It happens again later when Bialy takes complete credit for Eric's film idea, which leads to his death, and the police to figure out that Eric is the one that is responsible for a number of deaths across Los Angeles over the past few days. Along with Christopher, the rest of the cast does a solid job as a mostly unheralded group. Norman Burton, James Luisi, Eve Brent, and Morgan Paul, who play Eric's boss, the police captain, his aunt, and the movie executive respectively, all had full and storied careers in TV and film. That being said, you'd be hard-pressed to pick them out of a lineup. One thing of note is that Gwynne Guilford, who plays a cop and Thomerson's love interest, was pregnant during the shoot with future Captain Kirk, Chris Pine. Peter Horton, of 30-something fame, shows up as a date for Marilyn, and Mickey Rourke was cast in his second ever role as a bullying coworker who ends up on the wrong end of a shootout. The other main co-star, who would be the film's co-lead, would be a criminal psychologist named Moriarty, who is played by Full Moon favorite and Trancers series star Tim Thomerson. Not just known as Jack Death though, Thomerson has over 200 credits to his name that include video game voice acting and memorable roles in Near Dark and Uncommon Valor. With a solid and dependable cast and an original story, Fade to Black would release to mostly unfavorable reviews. Although Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars and an underwhelming domestic box office, it would end up being huge in other countries, especially France, and eventually make $15 million on its meager $1.8 million budget. Adding insult to injury, in addition to the poor box office and reviews, the movie would get sued just 2 months after its October release by William Boyd Enterprises. They felt the use of the clip in Hopalong Cassidy during one of the film's many inventive kill scenes where Eric goes fully off the rails was unauthorized and in poor taste. The scene in question involves Eric challenging Mickey Rourke's coworker character Richie to a duel dressed in cowboy makeup. It's a real shame that it came to that, as these scenes are the highlights of the film. The movie makes great use of clips too, ranging from White Heat with James Cagney, whom Eric takes his new name of Cody Jarrett, to Night of the Living Dead, to The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Oddly, Universal blocked the use of 1932's Dracula, even though The Mummy and Creature are still in play. His highs and lows are what caused his own downfall, as he is so excited to go on a date with young model Marilyn, even borrowing money from his aunt, and becomes downright homicidal when he is stood up. His first victim is his emotionally abusive aunt, who in an even more tragic turn of events, we find out is his biological mother. She claims that his real mother died in childbirth, but she hid her parentage as it would ruin her dancing career. In a case of poetic justice, her career is ruined anyways, when it is alluded to that she was in an accident on the way home after the babysitter called when Eric became ill. He reenacts a scene from Kiss of Death and makes his unknown mother's fall down the stairs look like an accident. He even wears a recreation of the clothes of Richard Widmark's character from that movie, Tommy Udos, to the funeral. Dressing up as Dracula to go see Night of the Living Dead, he then goes to peep on Marilyn and ends up killing a prostitute who was cruel to him. This is more of an accident, as she falls while he chases her and has her neck impaled by a piece of wood. To show how deranged he has become, however, he drinks some of her blood. After his co-worker Richie doesn't pay up for a bet about the movie Casablanca, Eric goes from possible accidental death territory to flat-out murder with the aforementioned Hopalong Cassidy scene. At this point, due to the randomness of the deaths and the costumes involved in the crimes, it is impossible to identify anyone as the perpetrator. Moriarty, however, has suspicions about Eric after an interview with he and the other co-worker who was with Richie right before he died. As Eric says, though, if he can't identify the killer, then no one will be able to. This chilling talk from Eric is another cold indication of how far he has snapped, even as he tries to go about his movie-loving life. After getting fired from his job for misplacing multiple projects and losing the petty cash, his former manager doesn't allow him into the office to collect his things, which include some valuable movie posters. Like anything else in his life, especially to do with movies, this sets him off, and he comes back dressed as the Mummy to stalk his former manager. This ultimately gives Mr. Berger a heart attack, with the film's one great jump scare of Eric bursting out of a poster for John Carpenter's Halloween, of all things. All of the film's costumes, makeup, and movie clips are used to great effect, and it's always fun to see what he will use next to enact his misguided revenge. You almost feel like Eric is seeing the movie clips instead of real life, something that gets doubled down on in the climax of the movie. Movie producer Bialy appears on a talk show to promote a current film, and when asked about his next project, he claims that Alabama and the 40 Thieves, a project Eric suggested to him as a crime caper based on 1944's Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, came to him alone on a drive. When Eric calls, Bialy ignores him and says it never happened. Dropping all sense of safety and subtlety, Eric shows up at Bialy's barber dressed as a 1920s gangster, Tommy gun included, and murders the man in front of several witnesses in broad daylight. The police and Moriarty finally piece everything together and catch up to Eric, who is trying to reproduce The Prince and the Showgirl with Marilyn as Marilyn Monroe and himself as Laurence Olivier. In an even more tragic turn of events, and maybe trying to have art imitate life, Eric forces an overdose on Marilyn before taking her to Grauman's Chinese theater. The finale is well acted, heartbreaking, and theatrical, just like Eric would have wanted it. The film's title also has multiple meanings, with fading to black being a term for a style of editing which the movie uses after every murder. The other side of that is Eric himself fading further into the black and losing more humanity each time he kills. The movie doesn't show up on any top 10 lists you can find. It underperformed with critics and fans at the time and had lackluster releases on the home video market. Its lack of an A+ star and multi-layered genre also make it difficult to classify, which would ultimately hurt its circulation. Thankfully, in this renewed age of streaming services and boutique physical releases, this is not only currently on Shudder, but those madmen over at Vinegar Syndrome released a special feature-loaded Blu-ray. I usually don't recommend remakes, as we need all of the original content we can get, or even adapting work that has never been seen on the screen. But movies like this, an underseen gem with a great story to tell, would be the exception. Disney, who now owns nearly everything, has the back catalog of films, and won't worry about anyone suing them for misuse of property. You could even have Dennis Christopher come back as Eric's boss, or the slimy film executive. Either way, this movie is a great, mostly unknown gem and earns its best horror movie you never saw status.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.